Our today's guest is a really, I almost said good old friend, but he's not old. He's just a very good and close and dear friend to me. I've known Mark probably for about 10 years or close to it, 9 years, I'd say. He's from Orlando in the Dr. Phillips Market Center, and he is today's guest. He is willing to pour into you guys, has so much to offer, is a fantastic individual and a wonderful agent. So why don't you introduce yourself, Mark? Tell them who you are, where you're from, what your area of expertise is as far as locations, because my goal is for you helping out and pouring into our agents. When our agents have referrals, I'd love for them to remember you and go back to you and send business. So, so tell everybody a little bit about yourself and what areas you handle.
Okay, thank you, Rich. And by the way, Rich, I'm grateful to be on this call with you and everybody. You've been a mentor of mine for many years, and I learn every time that I'm in your experience. So when you texted me about an hour and a half ago and said, hey, you want to be on a call? I was like, yeah. So thank you. My name's Mark Ramey. I am a real estate agent in the Southwest Orlando Keller Williams office. I've been selling real estate since 2002. As far as location for my business, as I'm calling through my database, I'm looking at addresses, and I got people like in 5 different counties and all over the place. I think that's occurred because when I was fresh in the business in 2002, I cut my teeth on expireds and for sale by owners. And so when I would work with expireds, and the way right now is a great time to be working with expireds, I found myself doing business all over the city of Orlando. I love to focus in Dr. Phillips and Windermere because that's where my office is. However, I will go 5 counties to list properties right now. And I believe right now, especially given what's going on in the market and that what we're seeing, I've always been taught, especially through when we go through challenging times like we are financially, that you've got to expand your market, because the number of people that are out there that are willing to do something where their motivation is stronger than their fear level has diminished. It's lower. So we might have to expand that market so that we can find the people that their motivation is higher than their fear level.
That makes total sense, Mark. I love that you brought that up. And what I'm finding from doing these calls is that the people that are out there are better quality leads. There's just fewer of them. Mm-hmm. So expanding your geographical boundaries would absolutely make sense. And you know, something that Gary has said, and John Prescott, somebody who's mentored me, is that in times like now, we may have to be willing to do more for less. And what I mean by that, you may have to do more work for either the same or less money. I don't mean commission dropping. I'm talking about the amount of your GCI. So by expanding your geographical boundaries would compensate to take your unfair share. And I love that you brought that up. So one of the things I could tell you, there's so many things that impress me about the way you carry your business. From the people on your team, you have wonderful, your sister and other people on your team's fantastic. But one thing that stands out above everything else, and I know you don't have it anymore, the very first time I visited your office in Dr. Phillips and saw your typical location, I found it very unique, Mark. Number one, the office space was roughly 4 feet by 3 feet. Looked like a broom closet, a utility closet. And you had the most, you made the most of that space. Number one, you'd go in and close the door. You do your script, and on the left, you had the mirror in front of you. On the left-hand wall, you had all your objection handlings and all your scripts. You had multiple papers, 7 or 8 pages of scripts and objection hand. Can you tell us a little bit about that environment that you created?
So by nature, I am easily distracted. So that's just how it is. And what I've learned is the fewer distractions that I could set up in my environment is the more effective that I would be in a period of time that I was supposed to be lead generating. And you know the bold law, all work, and hopefully I'm not getting it off, but all work expands the time allotted. Did I get it right, Rich?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Well, so when I didn't have that level of focus, what I found is I might be spending more time necessary, or I might even not even be conscious that I was avoiding spending time where I should have been spending time because I was wasting time. I wasn't doing things as efficiently as I could. And that space helped me remain focused. It was a good thing for that. It helped me
Yeah,
do
and
that.
I love that because when you got in there, you just got to business. You
Yeah.
you you got right into production, and you've always been an expired for sale by owner type individual. You've always excelled at those. Tell us a little bit about your mindset behind expired listings and why now more than ever expired listings may be the route to go.
Okay. Recently, I had to create an affirmation for myself because we are in a shift in mindset shift. It's a mindset shift right now.
Absolutely.
And what I observed is and I'm going to be honest, where I've failed in my business is since 2002, the first year that I'm calling through all 962 of my people is this year. I'm doing DTD2. And so what I'm discovering is how warm and welcoming those calls can be. And so then when I switch back to an expired call, what I'm aware of is if I am just solely focused on words and not connecting with the people, it just isn't going to work. I'm going to sound like every other agent that's on the call. And so what I have to realize and adjust internally in myself before I pick the call up, and I said this to a role play partner the other day, I said, and I don't know where it came from, but the idea came to mind. It's like, hey, listen, we've got to, before we get on the phone with an expired, it's got to be like we're calling our brother or our sister or someone that we really, really care about. And just, it can't be just, I'm going to go through my script and you're going to say some words. People are going through some hard times right now. And if we listen for just the little nuggets, like right now, the big thing is, what would you guess that it is? It's health and safety.
Right.
So if we're hearing people say, well, and it happens probably, I would say 8 calls out of 10. Well, we took it off until this is all blown over. Oh, you've taken it off until it's all blown over? Perfect. I can appreciate that. And it would make sense that you would do that because these are very different times, aren't they? Yes. So now I've just repeated it and I've approved what's important to them. And I'm just curious, if you were to sell this home, where would you be going to next? So then the next questions that we get into are where, why, and when, which is all about them. And if we're getting into their where, why, and when, and we discover that that motivation is stronger really than their fear level is, then it's very easy when we say, hey, guess what? We're pivoting. We've created new protocols so that buyers and sellers can be healthy, they can be safe, and you can still get to Michigan in time for that baby to be born so that you can be there for the baby's birth when your daughter has that baby. Won't that be great? So,
So,
yeah,
so the core to this piece is understanding pain versus pleasure,
yeah,
getting to the motivation, and then using that motivation, Mark, if I'm hearing you correctly. In other words, so Mark, if we can provide a safe environment for your family and for the buyers that are going to enter by doing it virtually and providing all of the CDC guidelines, and at the same time get you to Michigan to see your new grandbaby, would that work for you? And just repeating what you've already, that's just repeat and affirm.
yep.
It's got that is a technique, guys. It's called repeat and affirm. Repeat what they say. That's what Mark just did, and then affirm it. Don't argue. Say that, I feel the same way. Wonderful. Love that. So
Verbatim.
how big, what portion of your business, first of all, what's your average price point, Mark?
270. In the last 12 months, it was 270,000.
Okay, so that would basically be where Orlando is at 270. And I'm sure because you expand your areas outside, that you may be taking some smaller properties that are not inside of Orlando. Because
Mhm.
I know in Dr. Phillips, your average price point has got to be in the 400 to 500s.
Yes. Oh yeah, for sure.
Easily. So what percentage of your business are you getting from expireds?
Last year it was about 20%.
So 20%. So I just want everybody to think, if you're doing 20 deals a year, 20% would be four deals depending upon your average commission, times it by four, right? So in some of our areas, the average price point may only be 170 or 160. So even if you did, that's $5,000 times four is $20,000. Mark, the question I asked the agents though is, what would you do with an extra $20,000 right now? Because right now, do you think that our agents can use an extra 20 grand cash in their pockets?
Absolutely.
Absolutely. So talk to me about, what does an average day look like to you as far as your lead gen? Because you were very adamant. I know that you have your systems set up. Can you talk to us a little bit about your systems once you go into lead gen mode, what that looks like?
Yes. So I'm on the phones do role play at 7:15 in the morning um, till 7:30, and at the end of role play, we always end it with an affirmation. My affirmation these days is, I am a kind, confident, compassionate listener that asks great questions and sets appointments with motivated sellers and buyers. And what can I do for you right now? Um, and so I'm on the phones by 7:30. The purpose of that is to call expires before anyone else does, because once someone does, it becomes a little tainted, the conversation and the ability to connect. So I'll call expires typically between 7:30 and 8 o'clock. And then these days, it's big focus on cure calls to my database. So I'm reaching out to my database and just filling my time as I'm calling my database. If I get a voicemail, I'm doing the DTD2 calls.
Can you explain to everybody what that is? If they haven't been to Bold or Never Ending Referrals, they may not know what that is.
Okay, so you're gonna have to help me with the last T. No, two.
Doing the database two.
Do the what?
Doing the database two letters.
Yes. All right, thank you. All right, thank you. Now I know. Yeah, I knew I was gonna learn something on this. Thank you. So it's calling 2 letters of my database every single week. So that's in my schedule now. And I'm reconnecting with people, and I'm having great conversations now. They're taking a little longer because I've not spoke to some of these people since 2014, since 2007, and they remember me. And
So let's drill down on this, because I get this a lot of questions, especially in Bold. And I think we got a lot of people on the phone that are going to have the same question. If you have someone that you don't remember where you met them, or if you haven't spoke to them, like you just said, in 5 or 6 years, can sometimes a little bit of negativity enter your mind? Say, oh my God, I haven't called them in 6 years. What do I say? How do you deal with that?
Just remind myself what my intention is for calling, and it's really to be of service. That I don't have any expectations from the call other than that it be meaningful for them and meaningful for me. I've been taught by a coach before to envision that everyone has stamped on their forehead MMFI. Make me feel important. So that's it. It's just, I have to get into that. I get in that frame of mind. And then a big thing for me, because by nature I'm an introvert, I'm not really an outgoing person. So Ford has really helped me. And once you ask a handful of questions, you start to discover things that are really interesting about people, and then that carries the conversation.
Yeah.
And
So it's just as simple as breaking it down, taking 2 letters of the alphabet by the first letter of their last name,
yep.
and spend the entire week on 2 letters and just get everybody in your database. Now, one of the things when you first opened up, you said you had 962 people or 960 something people in your database. How important is it to get your database up to 1,000 people for you, Mark?
It's a what I'm discovering is so last year um, I only had a 4% return on that. And I know that as I have client events, I'm starting to see my goal this year is to get that to 6 to 8, and then eventually get it to a 10% return. Because if I get it to a 10% return, that's 100 transactions just from my database.
Right.
So yeah, I'd say it's pretty important.
So what advice would you give them if they don't have 1,000 people, names and numbers in their database that they're connect? And the key is what they're holding face-to-face conversations with, right? There's
Correct.
got to be connectivity between the two.
Right.
So what are some of the ways that you have gone through the years to build your database up?
I joined Rotary. For me, it made a lot of sense. Rotary to me was like a fast track to great relationships. It's a service organization, and to me, that was a great place to meet a lot of wonderful people. And as I got to know these people, I put them into my database, and I would go to lunch with them, and I would have these face-to-face meetings with them, and I would ask them how I could help them in their business. Those relationships grew over time. Um, I actually started to realize the value of putting my own family in my database recently.
Sometimes it's the little things, Mark, that we overlook: our doctors, dentists, family members,
Yeah,
people
yeah,
we take for granted that should be in our database and we should be connecting with them.
yep,
Have you
yeah.
ever had, and I know this is a pretty silly question, but I know it's happened to me. Have you ever had somebody super close to you, a friend or family member, that you found that bought or sold real estate or invested and they didn't use your services? How much does that pain? What does that feel like when you know that somebody very close to you didn't utilize you? And it's probably because we just never addressed it when we were in their company.
It's a big ouch.
Yeah?
It's a big ouch. Yeah. And actually, I think about it a lot because I also, when you think about it, the people that are on this call, they care about their clients. Otherwise, they wouldn't be here.
Right. That's right.
And and the reality is you care about your clients probably more than the average agent will. And so if we care about our clients that much, and there's 14,000 agents here in Orlando, let's use that number, the chances of, and I would say only 5% of them are really going to serve at a high level or care as much as you all on this call. So if we're not staying in touch with them, the chances of them running into one of these agents that maybe are subpar and getting poor service and maybe even getting hurt financially or their lives affected because of that transaction, they're pretty high. So when you think about it from that perspective, I owe this to these people. It's the drive that causes me to get on the phone. And if I don't, I'm causing them a disservice by not staying in touch with them.
So what everybody's hearing right now, we call this in layman's terms, servant leadership. See, Mark is a servant of all. He is very much a leader, but there's a difference between leadership and servant leadership. Mark's feeling is that he serves the people that surround him, his closest friends and families, and that we owe it to them. And that's the mindset shift between somebody who's in real estate for the commission and a person like Mark who's in it for the relationship, because Mark is very relationship focused, right? So, and one of the other people on our call, and I keep bringing this up because it just was a home run statement. So Tony Zargami from Sarasota, who said, in Shift we have chapter 12 is bulletproof the transaction, and she says what her model is bulletproof the relationship, Mark. Yeah. And that's kind of what you're describing right here. So I've got a question online. It says, so from Michelle, I thought it was illegal to call before 8 o'clock in the morning. So do you know if there's any actual time limits on when you can actually call a person?
Don't do illegal things.
I love that. Yes, I don't know. Mark's not an attorney. We're not attorneys, so he's not saying to call at 7:30. He's just saying what he did, and know that if you get somebody that's a little bit annoyed, be professional enough to know how to backpedal and apologize.
Absolutely. And if you want to wait until when you perceive that it's legal, I'm totally okay with that. I'm totally okay with that.
So, Mark, one of the things that I wrote down that you said too, every day at 7 o'clock or 7:15, you role play. How important is that to your success?
Um, it's hugely important. I actually, here's where I want you guys to know where I failed, okay? So you don't repeat it. Um, I stopped role playing probably about 3 years ago because for whatever reason, my ego thought that I just knew it all. That was a mistake. What I would always suggest is, and what I learned is there's always someone doing something better than me. And I think what had happened is I found that when I was role playing for so many years, I was I was teaching probably 9 out of 10 of my role plays, and I was learning maybe 1 out of 10. And that was my fault because I needed to get myself into a role play group where I would be learning at least 5 out of 10 and then teaching 5 out of 10. And what that meant is I had to put a little effort into finding that group. In fact, I pay $150 a year to be in my role play group because it's organized, it's set up, it's guaranteed that someone's going to be there. They are all tested before they get in. So I would suggest that as your career and your skills progress, always look to that next level and never think that you know it all, because I really, my skills dropped because I allowed myself to go without that for a period of time. And also my ego got in the way of me functioning at a higher level.
Sure. So, how many role play partners would you say you've had over the years, and how often do you change your partner?
Okay, I would be guessing on the role play partner number. I would say there's hundreds and hundreds. Um, and right now I'm in a system where every week I change and I have a new role play partner every week.
How important is that to you to have a different partner? Because I guess what happens is we get complacent and we get used to one another. And when we get in a state of complacency, we stop the learning process.
Yep.
Right. So changing them, that's obviously important to you to have a new partner every week.
Absolutely.
Beautiful. Yeah. So the next thing you spoke about, you mentioned affirmations. Why do you do affirmations?
Well, when we're about to end our role play call, one of the questions I always ask my role play partner is what is an affirmation that's going to put you in a place where you will function at a high level today and serve well? And I ask that question. So that's the answer. It's so that I can function at a high level and serve well. That's it.
So it puts your mindset in a positive place, yeah, so you can do the things that are necessary that particular day.
Yep. Rich, there's only a couple things that are in our outer world right now that are a little negative, right?
Right. I think about it this way, Mark, truthfully speaking, there's no better time in the world for our industry than right now. Think about this. Gasoline, $1.49 a gallon. I'm 60 years old, Mark. I can't remember $1.49 a gallon, right? We're connecting. I'm connecting with more agents now than I ever did as a bold coach, OP, team leader, general manager, whatever role I've been in. I'm connecting more now with people than before. So connectivity is higher. Relationship, there's more of a, and here, this is a word for you. You are very transparent and genuine, Mark, because every time I meet with you, we hug. It's real. The relationships, the feelings are genuine both ways. You're very genuine. When you say something, there's not, sometimes you ever meet a person and you say, I wonder what they really meant, or what was behind that. What was their motive? With you, there's never that feeling. Whatever you say is exactly what's in your heart. And I love that about you. That transparency, being genuine or real.
Thank you. Coming from you, that means a lot. What I've discovered for me, it's the fast track to, I just believe that's what we're here for. And I think where I had it backwards for so long in my life is that I thought that, oh, well, this is my home life, and now I'm going to segment it, and now I'm going to church, and now I'm going to segment it, and now I am seeing my friends, and now I'm going to segment it. It's all the same. And as long as I thought that I was able to compartmentalize and separate, people are people. And, you know, if I take something that I learned from work and I bring it to church, and those people there get something from that, and I take something for church and I bring it to work and they learn it, and then I tell a friend, it all goes together. And as long as I thought that I had to be compartmentalizing my relationships,
Right.
it's kind of like, you know how when you might tell a fib to someone, and then you got to wonder, okay, what did I say to that person?
Right.
It just, I never have to worry. You don't have to worry about that.
Come from the heart, and you never have to disguise the truth.
Yeah.
Yeah. So somebody once told me, Mark, that if you want to impress people, tell people about your victories. If you want to help people, tell them about your mistakes. So, what are some of the biggest mistakes you've made in real estate?
Well, you heard one recently that I stopped role playing for 3 years.
Mhm.
The biggest one you heard from me also on this call is that I've been in real estate since 2002, and this is the first year that I will actually call all 962 people in my database. That was a huge mistake. Um,
Any to do with team building or anything like that,
yeah,
Mark?
I'm thinking on that. Yeah. Um, I,
Bad hires?
yeah. Okay. So,
That usually gets all the megas. That's an important one. That's a curveball.
yeah. So, there's a process that we have the privilege to know through Keller Williams called career visioning. And it actually, until I knew the process, and when I first learned it, it was called Recruit Select. There was another word for it. And I actually hired my first wrong hire was my own husband. And he was in my business for 5 years. And I didn't realize that he was the wrong hire. This is how I hired Derek, okay? Um, so Derek, Disney, you just went to part-time now, and my assistant just quit. Why don't you come work with me? No. No, really, it'll be great, Derek. Come on, come work with me. No. Derek knew, right? So then this is how I trained Derek. Now, because Derek is very loyal and he's a great, he's still in my life. He's my husband still. And he came to work with me because he's loyal and because I sold him on coming to work with me, right? So then this is how I trained Derek. Mark, how do I do this? I don't know. All my other assistants figured it out for themselves. So, I mean, it's a wonder that we're still together. It really is. And one of the biggest mistakes was that I didn't have a plan for hiring the right person,
Right.
for setting them up for success in their first 90 days. And I have to thank Derek for allowing me to fail for 5 years. And then once I took this class, realize how much I failed, and then still be in my life and allow me to learn those lessons. And then he stuck with me for a good year until I actually hired my real first hire, next first hire. And I screwed up 3 more times and more times after that. But every single time that I hired someone new, I knew more about myself, and I knew more about what I was looking for in my business.
Yeah.
So,
And this is important because there's a lot of agents on the phone who are in that $2 to $5 million area where they're looking to hire their first admin and start their team. And I just want them to know it's okay if you make a mistake, right? We're all here to help. I'm here to help clean up the mess. Just go out and make the mess. Pull the trigger. I want you to just address this issue because if you remember when you hired your first admin, if that was Derek or not, I'm not sure. If whoever your first admin or hire was, how nervous were you before you pulled the trigger? Because people panic. They're like, I've got to take responsibility for another human being, another family. In your case, it was your husband, but other agents have to hire somebody that's not part of their family, and they're worried about the fear of, can I handle the stress load, the training, the financial? Can you just address that a little bit, Mark?
yeah, so my first hire wasn't Derek, actually. He was the
Okay.
hire after my first hire. My first hire, I was terrified because I had never hired anybody and I didn't even know what to train the person.
Right.
Um, I really was quite clueless. And So it's scary. And yet here's the thing. If any of us think about when something that we've done in our lives that's scary, right? I'm sure everybody on this call can conjure up an image of something that we've done, even though it was scary. And the question that you want to ask yourself is, on the other side of that scariness or that fear, how did you feel?
Right.
And
Absolutely.
what was your experience? And what I got from that first hire, I didn't even realize it was the amount of freedom that I received. Because this person, even though I didn't train them, they still took stuff that I shouldn't have been doing in my business. And it allowed me to be freed up to do more stuff. And the freedom that I felt, I was just like, it was amazing. And then I thought, because the person that I hired was a pretty automated, she was a pretty automatic person, and she was good. And then when she left, I was like, okay, well, this is automatically going to happen again. And you got to learn through the through the bumps.
Sure. 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 Because we've got a couple of people. I know there's one team in particular that's doing about 13 to 15 million, and they still didn't hire their first administrator. And yeah. So, and again, there's different reasons. There's no judgment, no judgment. Sometimes we just have to it's fear of faith. We choose bold law. We just have to have the faith that it's going to work out. We ask enough questions, surround ourselves by smart people, and we just got to move forward. I couldn't possibly imagine my life without team leaders or MCAs. And it's think about what your life would be if you did not have an administrative assistant or transaction to close or buyer agents.
Yep. Oh yeah. I couldn't focus on what I do really well. I mean, if you think about it, how many doctors do brain surgery and replace knees? None that I know of.
That's right.
I mean, they're all going to focus on one aspect. And why would we as professionals think that we should operate in a different way?
That is a great point, Mark. So would you rather be a specialist or a general practitioner? Right? And your specialty is listings, right? And otherwise, if you don't have administrative assistants, transaction to close, and buyer agents in that order, then you've become a general practitioner.
That's right.
And which we master nothing in that role.
Right. And here's how I learned it. I learned it the hard way, Rich. In 2002, I got into real estate. In 2004, I got a coach for my business. In 2006, I failed miserably. And here's how it happened. I was out showing property. At the time, I was still working with buyers. And I got a call from one of my sellers. And it went like this. Hey, Mark, our house was shown 3 times this week. What's the feedback? My answer. That's the wrong answer. So I went with my tail between my legs to my coach, and I told him what happened. And he said, all right, I'm going to email you a couple things. And then while I'm emailing you this, I want you to answer a couple questions for me. And I said, okay. He said, Mark, he said, when you go to the doctor's office, does the doctor take your temperature? I said, no. He said, does the doctor weigh you in? I said, no. He said, what's the doctor's job? I said, to study medicine and to heal me. He said, what's your job? I said, to study real estate and to sell houses. He said, yep. He said, are you running a onesies, twosies operation, or are you going to run a business where people can receive a high level of service? And that really, it hurt.
But you know what? That was the message you needed to hear at that point in your life. And that helped you go to the next level.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I absolutely love that. So one of the comments on the chat box is Michael online said he has over 3,000 people in his database, and a lot of them were people he didn't really know. And he went through them one at a time, making those phone calls. And then after speaking with them, added them to his database, his CRM, which is a fantastic way to give yourself a reason to contact. And there's no better reason to make a care call than right now in the circumstances that we find ourselves in, right? So I'd like to open it up. You've been very generous with us with your time. So guys, what questions do you have that you'd like to ask from Mark? We've covered a couple of topics in depth. So what would you like to ask Mark?
Mark, sorry.
Go ahead.
What is your, do you have a lot of people willing and accepting your phone calls at 7:30, 8 o'clock in the morning? And are they open to like having that conversation with you that early in the morning?
The ones that answer, yes.
Okay.
Yeah. And the ones that aren't open, they let me know, and that's okay.
For sure. Okay.
I think here's the people that make those calls, Irene, at that time. The people that don't make calls at that time usually don't make it for the same reason, and the reason is because they wouldn't want to be called at that time.
Right.
See, and then what my coaching hat comes on and says, so then when are we as agents going to make real estate about people and not us? It's not, we can't put ourselves into that equation. It's about the people. Mark, I told you, is a servant leader. His mindset is to serve the people, not to serve himself.
Right. Good point.
And the other thing on
Great
that
question, Irene.
Irene, on that note also is I've discovered that if I don't get to them first, their cage is rattled. And I have no ability to connect with them, or my ability to connect with them is way diminished. And so if I'm going to be able to serve these people, it's my obligation to connect with them first.
That's a great point, to get with them before the stress of the day kind of fills their head and they don't want to even have a conversation with anybody. So, wow, good point.
I'm thinking at that time that their guard is down too.
For sure, they're sitting there having
They
their
might not have had their coffee.
Right, right.
Yeah, love that. Who else has questions for Mark?
Mark, I have a question. If you call and they're like, "What are you calling me this early for?" What kind of response do you have for that?
You know, I truly apologize. Did I call you too early, Michelle?
Yeah, it's 7:30 in the morning.
You know, I'm very sorry if this is too early for you. I simply was calling to see is your home still going to be available for sale?
Yeah. I mean, I'm thinking about selling it still. Yeah, I mean, I want to sell it. I need to.
Okay, so in other words, if we had families that were interested in your area, would it still serve you that we pointed your house out to them?
Absolutely.
Okay, great. So when your home does sell, Michelle, where were you thinking of moving to next?
Okay, so you just go into the rest of the script anyway. Okay.
That's it.
So what Mark uses called the pattern interrupt. He interrupted your thought process with a question. Imagine that. We ask questions. You want, guys, remember this, if you want to get out of life everything that you deserve, learn to ask questions. It's the most important thing I can teach people. The power of the question.
And the other thing that we have to do, especially I'm noticing during these times, is we have to listen for those little subtleties of things that are important to them. So in that moment, if I'm going to stamp MMFI on your forehead, Michelle, then in that moment, the only thing that mattered to you is that I called you too early, right?
Right.
So the first thing I have to address is what makes you feel important. And I have to own the fact that I called you too early.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
I
And
love
then I can ask another question.
I love that.
Thank
I
you.
hope everybody wrote that down. That was a nugget. Any other questions for Mark?
Mark, first, I'd like to thank you for coming on the call. I appreciate it. Secondly, I know everybody keeps talking about calls and making calls regarding lead generation. What is your general rule outside of calling, like emails, texts, getting onto different platforms or connecting through different platforms? Is there a general rule, or calling is the majority base of how you're doing as a new agent here?
Okay, so as technology changed, when I first started doing this, there were no texts. And then when text happened, and I actually said this out loud one day, I said, "Oh, I'm never going to use text. Why would I get that on my phone?" Boy, did I learn. So everybody is going to use a different medium, and we have to be willing to communicate with people that they want to communicate. And sometimes what that means is I might call someone, I'm going to text them, and I'm going to email them. And if you're trying to reach a lead and maybe you haven't met them yet, here is a good little tip that I've learned over time. Like if you just get a fresh lead, you might, if you know their name, text, "Is this Jennifer?" Question mark. And that's it. Because people these days are not answering phone calls. However, if you text them, "Is this Jennifer?" that piques their curiosity and they want to engage. And once you can engage them in a conversation, then you've opened the door. Okay?
Perfect.
So
Because
all mediums.
yeah, that's the kind of
I'm
feedback
sorry.
I'm getting. I'm not getting those calls, the return calls. They want to communicate in a different platform. And I
Mhm.
don't know if that is, is that's the general rule and okay at regarding possible getting leads, or that one-on-one is more important.
Okay, I want to clarify your question. Are you saying that you're trying to communicate with people in a mass way, like mass texting, or could you clarify
No,
that?
they would just prefer to text over speaking on the phone. I guess because kind of like what we're speaking of, Michelle brought up earlier, is having the time. They didn't have the time to pick up the phone at that time, but they'll have certain time, especially with kids now at the house, to stop and talk. But I didn't know if I have to press the actual phone calls.
It depends on the subject. There are some things that I will not communicate in a text.
Okay.
And I'm sure, Jennifer, you're a smart lady. I'm sure that you have clarity around what you might communicate in a text and what not. And then if there's something that I have to communicate on the phone, I might just say, when are you available to speak?
Mhm.
Mark, can I just add too? I think it's important, Jennifer, that you need to know your audience. In other words, millennials today like to text.
Mhm.
If you know a person's preferred method of communication, that's something I used to ask every one of my clients. I used to specialize in short sales 12, 13 years ago. And when I got the listing, the very first question after motivation was, tell me about your preferred method of communication. Was it text, email, or phone calls? And once I understood that, they gave me the tools that were necessary to address their needs, not mine. So yes, listen to what Mark is saying about it depends on the content. Telling a person, "Hey, congratulations, your offer was accepted," is a phone call, not a text.
Right.
Mhm.
And then knowing your audience. Does Jennifer prefer text? Maybe Mark likes phone calls. Jennifer prefers text. Maybe Debbie likes, and I feel like I've got Richie's Brady Bunch because I've got all of you on my screen at once. And Debbie is she likes email. Knowing your audience, how they want to communicate is vital. You just need to ask. What is your preferred method of communication is the question I used to ask.
Great. Thank you for clarifying that for me.
Absolutely. Any more? One last question if we have time, because I promised Mark between 30 and 40 minutes, and it's already like 43 minutes. Is there one last question? Guys, with that being said, Mark, I love you from the bottom of my heart. Can't wait to see you so I can actually give you a real hug, not an air hug. I miss you. Big hugs, guy. You've delivered tremendously, a lot of nuggets. Guys, if you've missed this, it'll be on YouTube. By tomorrow, you can go right to that on my YouTube channel. Tomorrow, I think we've got, I don't have my calendar. Oh, I do have my calendar. I'll just tell you what's coming up for the rest of the week. Tomorrow we have, so our guest, Matt Perry, is having surgery today. He will be on next week. We have Molly DeMaitos, a Bolt coach from the Carolinas, does over 200 units a year, the Mike and Molly team. She'll be our guest tomorrow. Grant Simon is Friday, mortgage broker, to talk about mortgage and interest rates, how coronavirus is affecting mortgages. On Monday, we have Amber Rutherford, Tampa area, $40 million producer, owns a title company, and is a Bolt coach and mom of 4 under the age of 10. For those of you who want work-life balance. On Tuesday next week, we have our heroes for me. So when we say heroes, I think of doctors and nurses today, but the heroes in our world right now are our team leaders, because they're the ones that are fixing all the bandages and everything. So we have Sherry, Jim, we have Amy, our newest team leader for Mount Dora, who's on right now, will be with us, and Kate. On Wednesday, I have an open day. I haven't secured somebody. On Thursday, Perry, who's supposed to be on tomorrow, will be on next Thursday. And on Friday, Karina and Lance Loken, the #1 real estate agents in the world. They closed over 2,300 units last year.
Wow.
They're the biggest agents, not just in Keller Williams, biggest real estate agents in the world. Guys, so I'm appealing talent, Mark, and people who are amazing people to share. I treasure and I bless you guys for taking an interest in yourselves. You're investing your time in yourselves into listening to people like Mark who have so much, a plethora of information. So everybody stay safe. I appreciate you. And Debbie, your question is, there's a resource library. Go to your team leader. They have access to the recess library. All the documents that the people have sent to me for this is in my resource library, which your team leader has. So speak to Kate, and she'll get your access to that. So guys, I love you. Stay safe and be productive.
Thank you.
Take care, everyone.
Bye-bye, everyone.
Bye.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.